This is the sixth lecture. Last time we were discussing large n problem. Uh, so let's see what we are going to do in today's session. So first, we will be reviewing large n behavior of binomial distribution, which we did last time towards the end. And we will, and you know what we did, we showed binomial distribution in case of large n becomes a Gaussian distribution. Then we will also see how this also becomes Poisson distribution in the work condition. What is Poisson distribution, of course. Then we will see microscopic states and macroscopic states, and we will proceed in a direction to establish connection between thermodynamics and statistics. And that's what is the aim of our. For more information about our activity and videos, you can visit our website, infinitelearning.org. I would also request you to subscribe our YouTube channel, Dr. Modi's Infinite Learning, if you are interested, so that you can get the information about new videos which are being posted. Okay. So what we started was with the binomial distribution, as you see it on the screen. Uh, I request all of you to make sure that you keep writing down simultaneously as you see it on the screen, like a normal classroom, because otherwise you will tend to miss some of the finer points, especially in mathematical equations. So you have a binomial distribution for random walk problem, which we use. We correlated the same random walk problem to tossing of coin to particles in a box going either to the left or to the right of the box. Uh, and now we will say that let this distribution have maximum at some value m. We use this m earlier in binomial distribution for a different purpose. We called that m as the net displacement, which is n1 minus n2. So in this case, it will be 2 times small n minus capital N. But here we are giving a different meaning. We are saying that it is the value of n at which w has maximum, and it decreases as it goes away from m. And what is the criteria for it to be a continuous one? That's the criteria that the two successive values are so close compared to the actual value. Okay, the difference between w of n plus 1 and w of n is very, very small compared to actual value of w of n. And w will have a maximum when either you say dw by dn is 0 or d log w by dn is 0. I hope you are all writing down these steps simultaneously. I know you may have written it down last time. There's nothing wrong in just writing it once more. So now what we will say is that let's take n value which deviates from m, where w is maximum. Okay, so wherever we will have n minus m kind of expression, we can replace it by n. Log of w will look something like this, expanded around m. Okay, so it will be log of w of n equal to log of w of at m plus higher. I mean, this is like expanding a function f of x around x0. So you have f of x0 plus x times f dash x0 plus x square by 2 factorial times f double dash x0 and so on. Second derivative, third derivative. So on. So you will have this x term, x square term, x cube term, where these coefficients are simply corresponding derivative. Okay. Well, I should just make a small change here. Please, I have noticed again. This should be, since we are expanding log w, this should be derivative of log w. Okay. So bk should be kth derivative of log of w, of course, at n equal to n. So if wn has a maximum, the log is a monotonically increasing function. And therefore, if W increases, log W will increase. If W decreases, log W will decrease. So if Wn has maximum, log Wn also will have maximum. That maximum will be at n equal to n. And at maximum, the criteria is that the first derivative is 0, which means B1 will be 0. And the second derivative for maximum has to have a negative sign. So that we will write explicitly B2 as negative of mod of B2, just to indicate that this B2 is negative. Yeah. Oh, and then if you ignore the higher order terms, right, then your Wx can be written as W0. You see, it was log of W of x, okay, which was written as W at x equal to 0 plus half B2x square. And therefore, W will be e raised to half B2x square. Remember, B2 is negative, so we wrote it as minus modulus of B2. So we'll get W of x as W0 e raised to minus half B2x square. Now, this is Gaussian form of the function. We will see what it looks like. But I've already mentioned last time, it's a bell-shaped curve. Uh, Now, your log W of n actually is log of n factorial minus log of small n factorial and so on, right? And in that case, if you find out where the maximum is, so here you are taking the derivative, then you are taking log of n factorial derivative with respect to n, that you are saying is approximated as uh, uh, log n. Yeah. So that is here approximated as log n. Then you have therefore, derivative of log of W will look because each term now will be replaced by corresponding log n. Okay, so but capital N is constant, so its derivative will be 0. So minus log n factorial derivative will be minus log n. Minus log of n minus n derivative will be plus log of n minus n. This derivative, of course, is much simpler. Minus log p minus log q, and that tends to 0 at n equal to. And therefore, you would get an expression which says n minus m divided by m to p by q equal to 0. And that will give you m equal to capital N times p. Remember, q is 1 minus p. So your maximum occurs at m equal to n times p. That's, of course, also your average value in a way, because p is the probability. So, and therefore, if you now take second derivative, you will get B2, which will be, now this I leave it as homework for you people. You are all smart enough to be able to take the two derivatives and go ahead. So, of course, again, there's a mistake here. This should have been log of W, the second derivative of log of W. So you need to take derivative of each of this with respect to small n, and that will give you second derivative as minus 1 by npq. Now n, p and q are positive, so naturally you can see that b2 turns out to be negative. If you want, as an exercise, you can check that your b3, b4 and higher derivatives are negligible. So can I move over to the next slide? I hope all of you have written these equations down simultaneously as I was doing.
Yes,
I'll
sir.
repeat, there is a small typographic here. This W should have been log W. Even earlier I told you in the previous slide that B2 BK, which was written as kth derivative, should have been of log W. So that's why I was asking you to write it down. If you just look at the slides, you may miss some of these points. Okay. So if you look at now x was n minus m. So when n is equal to m, Okay, that x is 0, which means the maximum occurs at w0 at x equal to 0 or at n equal to m, right? And then as you go away from x, it will fall rapidly off. All right. So now the total probability has to be 1. So take summation. And in this case, now that you have converted W into a continuous distribution, what you call as Gaussian distribution, so total integral as you go for x minus infinity to plus infinity should be 1. Okay. And this integral we have evaluated last time. Remember, if you have e raised to minus ax square, integral will be root pi by a. So in this case, your integral will be root 2 pi by b2. Okay, and that gives you value of w0, right? So w0 becomes root b2 upon 2 pi, right? Now you already know what is b2. Okay, b2 was minus 1 upon npq. So modulus of b2 is 1 upon npq. So this becomes 2 pi npq raised to minus half e raised to minus nm square upon 2 times delta n square bar. Okay, you remember what was your delta n square bar value? That was npq. Here we have just now, what is important about this distribution is that if you look at three-dimensional diffusion equation, okay, three-dimension means suppose if I put a drop of ink in water, and then you can see slowly this ink or a color drop spreading in water, okay, uh, as a function of r, as a function of time, then it has this same exponential behavior which you have calculated. So this tells us, and then of course this W also is normalized. So this tells us that there is a hope. We started with a random walk with constant step size, and in a large n limit, we got it into a Gaussian distribution, and that Gaussian in 3D actually does represent diffusion of your something into a medium. And if you look at one-dimensional diffusion also, it's almost the same equation. And therefore, now we think that yes, statistically, we may be able to explain thermodynamic behavior of a system. Uh, but we still have long way to go. But at least it gives us an indication that I can go in this direction. And it looks as if we are proceeding in the right direction. Now, if you allow me, I would like to change the slide. So is there anybody who is still writing down and would want me to wait for a few more seconds?
Sir,
Yes, sir.
Wait,
Yes, sir.
wait,
yes, sir, yes,
wait.
sir, Victor, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Can I proceed now? Hmm? Since nobody
Yes,
has,
sir.
yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I think it's okay for everyone. I can proceed for the next one. All right. Now we are actually looking at properties of Gaussian distribution. Now, typically, a Gaussian distribution is represented as it's a probability distribution. So Px dx, 1 by root 2 pi sigma. Sigma is not under the square root sign. E raised to minus x minus mu whole square divided by 2 sigma square dx, where your mu is p minus q times nl and sigma is 2l times root npq. So that's what the distribution looks like around mu. So it has got a peak at mu and uh, falls off as you go away from mu. Now, if you look at it, if you put x equal to mu plus sigma or mu minus sigma, probability will drop to 0.606. So that's a sigma. Okay. So in a way, sigma represents a standard deviation. So if you want to know slightly, when the Higgs boson was discovered and when people announced, they said that the validity of their result that there is a particle is within 5 sigma. 5 sigma covers almost the entire distribution. It means they were very much sure that they had actually seen the particle. Now, this distribution is also normalized. So I would actually tell you that this, as an exercise, you should work it out after the class. Okay. So you have got this distribution. You know how to do the integration. Okay. X minus mu, it's a square, will not matter because mu is very small if you put limits of minus infinity to plus infinity. So mu should not be playing much role. Or you can make a transformation and put x minus mu equal to some new variable and it would reduce to a simple expression that you can integrate. We have already discussed last time those standard integrals. So those would be very handy. Then the average value of x is mu in this case. See, if e raised to x minus mu whole square wasn't there, the average would be automatically zero. But because of x minus mu, even if you change your variable, because you would have changed your variable, here also you would put instead of this x new variable, some u plus mu. So that mu term will give you the u term will give you zero, but the mu term will give you this. It's a very pretty obvious calculation. Even if you are good with simple integrations, you can see that that's what going to happen. You may not have to actually do it, but I would advise you to do it. Then your delta x square, this is called variance, which is sigma square, turns out to be delta m whole square L square. And that's what that sigma is what you have written here. So sigma square will be 4npql square. This will be 4npql. And the fluctuation away from x is proportional to 1 by root n. And this was also a feature of binomial distribution. Of course, no wonder we could show that in large n case, binomial does become Gaussian. So whatever was obeyed by binomial has to be obeyed by this new distribution, which is Gaussian in this case. So fluctuation is going as 1 by square root of n. Now, this random walk problem, which we have talked about, has limitations. First is actual motion is more than one dimensional. So what we talked about was one dimensional motion. An actual motion of a drunkard also would not necessarily be in one dimension. There may be more probability in particular direction, but it would in general not. And if I am talking about a gas molecule going around and diffusing in 3 dimension, probability will be same in all possible directions. So that's going to be not very easy to deal with. And the actual step size are also unequal. It is not necessary that your gas molecule, which is following zigzag path, that all the lengths would be equal in length. No, that's not going to happen. So there was a limitation, but at least it still gave us a very good idea about how things are statistically. Okay? What you expect in thermodynamic behavior. Now let's look at an exercise of Poisson's distribution. Now what it says is that this is your binomial distribution. Okay, you read this question. Oh, you want me to go back to the previous slide? You want to note down something?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I missed it in the flow. Okay, if you are comfortable with Microsoft Excel, you can put some values for sigma and mu, uh, and then you can try plotting this graph in Microsoft Excel, and you will find that very interesting to see that graph. If you look at our binomial distribution also, when n became 40, and then if you can continue plotting like that for n equal to 400, 4,000, you'll see it will resemble this. So I would suggest that you should do this kind of exercise. It will be really useful. Uh, Okay, I'll just remind you again. First equation, which you see, number one is a normalization one. Second is calculation of average value of the Gaussian distribution. Third is calculation of variance, which turns out to be sigma square. And fourth is the fluctuation. Okay. Now, can I go to the next slide? Is everybody done copying?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Since nobody says no, I'm assuming that everybody is done with. So we can go over to the next slide. That's an exercise. So you have a probability W of n that an event is characterized by probability P occurs n times, small n number of times in capital N trials. Remember, in binomial distribution, small n times he makes forward step, each step with probability P. That's what it means actually. Was shown to be given by binomial distribution. So you are all familiar with this now. Now we consider a situation where P is very, very small. Okay. Now, so you don't go and correlate this with a drunkard problem. Okay. Some other problem. So the probability of this occurrence is very small. Non-occurrence is very large. Okay. Q, 1 minus P, is almost 1. P is very, very small compared to 1, as you can see here. And where 1 is interested in case when small n is also very, very small compared to capital N. Okay, so the number of occurrence you are looking at is also very small compared to your actual number of steps or trials. All right. So if n is large, Wn naturally tends to become Gaussian in one way. But in this case, we have added one more condition that P also is very small compared to 1. So let's see what happens. Wn becomes very small if small n approaches capital N. In this case, because n is large, your P is very small. So if small n approaches capital N, then P raised to capital N will be, see, 1 minus P is almost close to 1. So P raised to capital N will be very, very small. This number will become almost 1, right? So Wn becomes very small if n approaches capital N because of smallness of P raised to N. Hence, Wn is indeed only approximate, is only appropriate when small n is very, very small compared to capital N. Several approximations then can be made to reduce Wn as given above to simpler form. We have already discussed Gaussian form. Now using the result that log of 1 minus p. Now this is of course the Taylor series expansion. You will have of course p square p cube terms also, but we are saying that p is very small compared to 1. So p square p cube terms can be ignored. Then log of 1 minus p will be almost minus p, and therefore you can write 1 minus n also you have to show, I'm sorry, you have to show that 1 minus p raised to capital N minus small n can be approximated as e raised to minus np. All right. That's very simple. You will do this at home as an exercise after the class, but I will just give you an idea. If I do 1 minus p raised to n minus n binomial expansion, then the first term will be 1 minus n minus n, capital N minus small n, 1 minus n minus n times p plus p square, p cube, etc. term. Now, since we said that p square, p cube and all can be ignored, then that expansion will be more like 1 minus capital N minus small n. Remember, small n is also very, very small. You can ignore. So it is 1 minus capital N times p. And if you look at e raised to minus np, for a very small np value, also it will have a Taylor series 1 minus np plus higher order term. So point is that this term can be approximated as an exponential term. And you also have to show that n factorial upon n minus n factorial will be like n raised to small n, capital N raised to small n. Now this I am leaving to you purely as an exercise. It should not be very difficult for you to do. Okay. One way, of course, you can think of doing is maybe taking log and then just see how it works out. And then you can show that Wn can be represented as a distribution lambda raised to n by n factorial into e raised to minus lambda, where your lambda is np. You know, where this e raised to minus lambda comes from is this point. And then you had this n factorial upon n minus n factorial here, that you are reducing as capital N raised to small n, and you had p raised to small n. Remember, this we have replaced by the exponential. Now n raised to small n, p raised to small n will multiplied np as lambda here. You can see lambda is np. So this will become lambda raised to small n divided by this small n factorial, which you have not touched so far. So that distribution is known as Poisson's distribution. Okay, and you can show that even this Poisson's distribution, if you sum up, will be 1. That's it's normalized. And also you please calculate the variance. Okay, so you can calculate the average value of Poisson distribution, you can calculate the variance of Poisson distribution. Now, this problem, of course, you will receive it, so you need not copy it down, but I have discussed some of the features. If you remember, if after the class today only you sit with this exercise and do it, otherwise you would forget what I have suggested. The next exercise is, of course, to use the same Poisson's distribution in case of an alpha particle emission. So it says that if you have an alpha particle emitted by radioactive source during some time interval t, then one can imagine that this interval can be subdivided into many small intervals of length delta t. Right? So your number of trials naturally will become t divided by delta t, capital N. Okay, because each trial will be in that small interval delta t. Since alpha particles are emitted at random times, probability of a radioactive disintegration occurring during any such time delta t is completely independent of whatever disintegration occurs at any other time. Furthermore, delta t can be imagined to be small enough so that probability of more than one disintegration occurring in time delta t is negligibly small. This means there is some probability p of one disintegration occurring in delta t. So in a way, this is indicating how you should choose your delta t value. Okay. So if you know the probability p, let's say probability p is 0.4. Okay. So uh, zero point 0.4 disintegration in 1 second. It means you want to go for one disintegration, then you have to take time interval delta t of 2.5 seconds. Then you will get one disintegration. So essentially, delta t is an interval in which only one disintegration can occur. So with p very, very small compared to world, delta t was chosen to be small enough. And 1 minus p is the probability of no disintegration. That means that's an interval. Some intervals there will not be any disintegration, and that probability will be 1 minus p. Each such time interval delta t can then be regarded as an independent trial. So first delta t, there is a trial. There may be a disintegration observed. There may not be disintegration observed. Second interval, you may observe disintegration. You may not observe disintegration, and so on. So each interval, when you are observing, is an independent interval. So what you have to show that the probability Wn of n disintegration occurring in a time t is given by Poisson distribution. So how will you show? You by figuring it out how you would represent this in terms of lambda. Means you have to figure out from the given information what will be your lambda. And then you are told that there would be average 24 disintegration in 1 minute. Then you want to calculate what is the probability of obtaining n counts in time interval of 10 seconds. Okay. And you are expected to calculate this probability for small n value from 0 to 8. Okay. Of course, this depends on the choice of your delta t. But this is a problem. This is an exercise for you, and that I am not going to talk about. If you do the first exercise 3 and first parts of exercise 4, this should be really easy to understand. Now there are two more problems. I'm not going to read or discuss about them because they are completely left to you. They are not difficult at all. You should be able to. So one was the problem of a particle being somewhere on a circle or circumference of a circle. The second part somewhere on the surface of a sphere. You have to find probability. That's very easy. Uh, but the next one is you are given some random walk problem and in which the probability of displacement between s and s plus ds is given, and you have to find probability for after n steps. It will be between x and x. And does it become actually? So first you have to calculate px dx, and then second, does px become Gaussian if your capital N is very large after large number of test wishes? Very interesting exercise. It will require some thought process, but it will be good exercise. Now, uh, when we are talking about thermodynamic system, we will talk about macroscopic and microscopic state of the system. I'll give you an example. Suppose we were talking about throwing of two dice. You remember when we throw two dice, there are 36 possibilities. Each die can show you number from 1 to 6. Therefore, 6 into 6, 36 possibilities. But then we said that look, for some, which will be varying from 1 to, sorry, 2 to 12, there are different possibilities. So 2 can occur only one possible way when both of them show 1. 3 can occur in two possible way. One shows 1, other shows 2, or the other way. So there are two possibilities and so on. Okay. So if I talk about sum of the number on two dice, that will be like my macroscopic state, which means I am not interested in which detail give rise to this sum, but I am interested only in the result, right? Whereas what are the actual possibilities, details are called microscopic state. So if I take sum 7, I have a possibility 1, 6, 2, 5, 3, 4, 4, 3, 5, 2, 6, 1. So those six possibilities. So those are six microstates of a system. Okay. And these six microstates, any of those six will give you a macro state that sum is 7. Okay. So typically with two dice. Now in case of thermodynamic system, let's say we talk about a gas. If we can talk about microstates, we have no way of knowing microstates. Okay. It's just that our understanding of detailed process of what gives rise to thermodynamic property. But finally, we want it to give us the same result for pressure, volume, temperature, the relation, the equation of state. Okay. So although we start with some kind of understanding of what is the thermodynamic process which gives rise to pressure, volume, temperature, etc. Okay, of course, we are talking about statistics now. We want to do it in terms of statistics. Finally, it should lead us to understand what are the macroscopic properties. So, my macroscopic states are specified in terms of quantities like number of particles, volume, energy, even pressure, temperature. These are also macroscopic properties. So, number of particles, suppose if you have states with ith state with ni particles. and each of those states have energy EIs, then that's total number of particles here, and that's total energy of the. Now, microscopic state is details, like there are Ni particles going into energy state EI. Now, which Ni out of capital N particles is, of course, subject to statistics. But that's what gives rise to some of the macroscopic property of volume and total energy and so on. So, in microscopic state, you worry about details like Ni particles have energy EI. Okay? In general, there could be several microscopic states, like the case of two dyes I told you. In gas, it's not going to be much easy, uh, not as easy as like two dyes, but we will find a way out using our understanding of physical process. So try correlating with the number of particles, uh, this on the left half and right half, and how many ways can we get uh, total seven in toss of two dice. This we have already discussed. If you have a number of particles in left half and right half, you had 2 raised to n particles. So you had 2 raised to n possibilities. How many ways can you have, let's say, n by 2 particles on left and n by 2 on right, or n by 4 on the left and 3n by 4 on the right? Okay, so those are going to be your macroscopic states, where you are not bothered about which particle on which side, but you are still able to generate certain behavior in terms of probability. Okay. Now, very often we talk about what we call as thermodynamic limit. Uh, uh, did you people copy down this microscopic and macroscopic states, or you want to? Shall I move further, or you would like to copy it down? Hello,
So copy
are
करो.
you? आप लिख रहे हो? हाँ,
Yes,
लिख लो,
copy
लिख
it
लो.
down.
Copied, sir.
Copied. Okay. Is there anybody who is copying? Then I will wait. Otherwise, I can move on.
Done, sir.
Okay, I can move on. Fine. That's thermodynamic limit. When number of particles go to infinity, in practice that doesn't happen. But you are dealing typically of number of particles of the order of 10 raised to 24. So that counting purpose, it's as good as infinity. NV is going to infinity, but N by V is constant, and that's your thermodynamic limit. Okay. What it means is that if I take my, suppose I have a box and a gas inside, and if I take a very small volume, the number of particles inside may not remain constant. Okay, so then you are not in thermodynamic limit, because we are talking about random motion of gas molecules. Then a very small size box will not allow the same number of particles to remain in that same box. So you take your V sufficiently large and N sufficiently large that in equilibrium at any given moment you'll have almost the same number of particles in that volume. That is what you call as thermodynamic. So we are dealing with thermodynamic system, and the system size is determined by this condition. In thermodynamic limit, we have something which is known as extensive parameters and intensive parameters. The extensive parameters are those parameters, properties, like volume and number of particles, which are proportional to size of the system, which depends on the size of the system, mass depends on size of the system, etc., etc. And there are intensive properties, which depends not on the size. So like pressure and temperature. So if I have a system in equilibrium, no matter which point I go to, I will have the same pressure, no matter how small. I take a box and I make the box smaller. So I take half of the box, I take 1/4 of the box, I take 1/10 of the box. As long as I am within thermodynamic limit, I'll be measuring same pressure and temperature. So that's why pressure and temperature does not depend on size of the box I have chosen. So that's an intensive property. But of course, if I take a smaller box, volume becomes small, number of particles becomes small, total energy inside that box will also be small. So those are extensive properties. Okay, so it depends on the size you have chosen. So intensive properties are independent of size of. Then there is a postulate of equal a priori probability. It says, uh, okay, there is a typographic again mistake here. The word here should be macrostate, not microstate. So that I should have been A here. Okay. It says given a macrostate system can be in any one of the associated microstates with equal probability. All microstates are equally likely. That's postulate of equal probability. Probability. What does it mean is that if you throw two dice, okay, as an example, there are 36 possibilities. All 36 possibilities are equally likely. Now, if I say that my sum is 7, then there are 6 ways I can achieve it. Okay, if I say that sum is 7 and you are not given any other information, then all the 6 possibilities for the sum to be 7 are equally likely. So, given a macro state that sum is 7, uh, the system can be in any one of the associated microstates. You do not know about it, and therefore they are all equally likely, with equal probability. Okay? As such, if we are not talking about sum, all 36 states are equally likely. But if I tell you what is the sum, suppose if I say sum is 5, okay, that sum 5 can occur in 4 possible ways. So then all these 4 possibilities are equally likely. That's what is the meaning of equal a priori probability. When you deal with 10 raised to 24 particles, okay, uh, specifically mentioning details will not be such an obvious thing. Okay, for such simple examples, hypothetical one, you can talk about. But essentially, you will be talking about number of states calculation, and therefore that is important. Uh, the actual possible number of microstates we will represent by uh, capital omega. This is Greek alphabet, capital omega. You reuse it for a resistance symbol, uh, which is going to be function of N, V, and E, number of particles, volume, and energy, total energy of the system. And that's what is going to be our mission. And I still have to tell you that what is the direction in which we are heading. But at least this is what we are talking about. Thermodynamic limit, equal a priori probability, and counting of a number of states. So now we want to talk about connection between thermodynamic and statistics. Now this may not go exactly as I am thinking. So we will see how much we are able to cover in a given time. What is how to establish connection between thermodynamics and statistics? Okay. So one possible way was, you see, when you toss two dice and you want to gamble on it, we have talked about it. The best bet is to bet on number 7 because that's most likely. If I have a box with n molecules, okay, what is the equilibrium state going to be? Then I'll say, okay, look, there'll be n by 2 molecules on the left, n by 2 on the right, because I know that's the most probable. If I write binomial distribution and I find probability, then I will find that probability of half of them on the left and half of them on the right are maximum. Now, which out of n, which n by 2 out of n, that is going to be your microstate. But it's going to be equal on both the sides. Now, in case of thermodynamics, we talk about in terms of entropy. We say entropy is increasing. So you remember the picture I had shown you. You had guessed in the one half of the box and you lifted the partition and it spreads uniformly. Okay, that spreading of uniformly is going in a direction in which, see, earlier in one half of the box, if you counted number of states, there was no problem. Okay, now you lifted it up, your system has become of the volume 2V. And in this volume 2V, there'll be many possible number of states. You have n particles. Remember, all molecules going in first half of the box is only one possibility out of 2 raised to n. But getting divided into half half is very, very large number of possibilities. So you are in a possibility of a very small likelihood, and you are heading in a direction which is most likely, which is most probable kind of spread distribution. Okay. So you can see the relation. You are in a state of small entropy. Now then, when it expands to fill the entire box, you say that entropy has increased. So you are going from a very small entropy to maximum entropy system. You are going from a possibility of only one possible state to large number of states, maximum number of states possible. Okay, so statistically, you are going from less likely situation to most likely situation. Thermodynamics, you will say I am going from lower entropy state to higher entropy state, which means there is a direct relation between entropy and number of states, and that's what we are going to make use of. So I'm taking two. I'm taking a box with two with a partition into two. One is A1, other is A2. The number of states on the left in A1 is omega 1, which depends on number of particles N1, V1, and volume V1 and energy U1. Uh, uh, U1 is energy in this case. On the right hand side, you have omega 2, which depends on N2, V2, and such that, okay, I'm sorry, in this picture it is U1, U2, but I have changed the symbol actually to E1, E2. So please, you are requested to note this when you copy it down and you write it down. Make sure that you write accurately here. Don't write U1 and E2 here. Write E1 and E2. I just wanted to be consistent in symbol and made a small mistake here. Okay. Please continue writing. Draw this diagram. Shouldn't take much time. The total number of states I have is omega 1 into omega 2. A1 can have omega 1 number of possibilities. A2 can have omega 2 number of possibilities. Each of the possible state of A1, there are omega 2 states in A2. A1 has omega 1 states. So total number of states likely are omega 1 into omega 2. Something of like this you may have done earlier in your earlier BSc. Now we are saying that A1 and A2 can exchange energy. So there is a partition between A1 and A2, but the partition is diathermal. It allows exchange of energy, nothing else, no other thing. Particles cannot go from one to the other, neither are the volumes going to change. Only energy can be exchanged till the equilibrium is reached. Okay, so if I have two boxes, one at higher temperature, other at lower temperature, and if I allow exchange of energy, these are common perceptions. Then you know that the equilibrium will be reached when both the sides temperature becomes equal. So that's our starting point. That is how we are going to try and understand. So let's say when equilibrium is reached, energy on the left half is E1 bar and on the right half are the E2 bar. And as you understand from our previous discussion, equilibrium state is going to be the most probable state. And if the state is most probable, then omega has to be the maximum. This omega, which we talked about here, has to be maximum with respect to E1 bar. So if I take derivative with respect to E1 at E1 bar, that should be 0. I could have done it with E2 also. But the fact is that total energy is still constant. We are saying that whatever exchange takes place, there is no exchange with the surrounding. So energy exchange takes place only between A1 and A2, not with the outside world. So the total energy of A1 plus A2 will be constant. You could as well take derivative with respect to E2, because if E1 changes, E2 will change correspondingly, but the sum will going to remain same. One increases, other decreases. If I take this differentiation, I have two terms. So I take derivative of omega. First, I take derivative of omega 1. It's like UV rule. U times derivative of V plus V times derivative of U. And that should be equal to 0. because that's your equilibrium. That's where the number of states getting maximized. And if I divide by omega on both the sides, then the first term will become 1 upon omega 1 times the derivative. Second term will become 1 upon omega 2 times derivative. I repeat, I'm dividing by omega, which means omega 1 and omega 2 both. Omega 2 gets cancelled here, first term, second term, omega 1 gets cancelled. Then this term, which is 1 upon omega 1 times derivative of omega 1, can be written as derivative of log of omega, right? And then I can transfer this term. You can do this little exercise. I can transfer this term. It will have a negative sign. But since E1 is going to be E minus E2, and therefore, if I replace dou E1 by dou E2, it will come with a negative sign. So I will get the two derivatives for omega 1 derivative with respect to E1, omega 2 derivative with respect to E2 to be equal. That parameter we would call as beta. Okay. And that is going to symbolize equilibrium because these E1 bar and E2 bar are my equilibrium energy. So I suggest after taking this derivative, you will have to perform these two steps and convince yourself that that's what you get. So please do that. We are almost coming towards the end. We have 10 more minutes. I would suggest quickly make sure that you guess this last equation so that I can at least discuss one more slide with you. That's where we were. Have you copied down and convince yourself that the taking derivative, we will get the last equation. Since derivative on each side is having the same value, we call that value as beta. Remember, E1 plus E2 is constant. So variation in E1 will be negative of variation in E2. So dou E2 is negative of dou E1. And if I, after dividing and I take this term on the right hand side and I replace this dou E1 by minus dou E2, I will get this. So if it's okay with everybody, I would like to go to the next slide. Hello. I'm assuming that this is okay. Roshan, is Roshan present today?
No, sir.
Okay. Harshdeep, is this okay? Can I move over to the next slide?
Yes, sir.
Everyone has copied at least. Okay. You'll be able to do this simple algebra. It's too simple. If anybody has an objection, please raise it. Otherwise, I'm moving
Yes.
to the next slide. Okay. Thank you very much. Yes. So that's what we had, the last equation. Uh, Now, if you remember your thermodynamic equation for energy, right? It was dE equal to TdS minus PdV. I'm repeating. You had dE equal to TdS minus PdV. So if I assume volume to be constant, of course there will be plus mu dN also. So if I assume volume and number of particles to remain constant, which is the case in this case, right? You are neither changing volume on left or right, nor you are allowing number of particles to change. Volume and n is constant. So dE is simply TdS. That means dou S by dou E at constant N and constant V is 1 by T. Now you just correlate these two. Remember, we are saying that these two quantities are equal. That is the state of equilibrium. We are saying that in the dou S by dou E is 1 upon T. Okay, and the two temperatures, one on the left and one on the right, also have to be equal. So that tells us something, that there is a relation between these two. See, this is purely statistical. We are just calculating number of states. Of course, it's abstract. We have not actually worked out number of states, but at least we are saying hypothetically, this is what is representing number of states. That's the condition for equilibrium. And the same condition for equilibrium appears to be here, where I can write this for left hand side, and that will be equal to the same thing for right hand side, which means there is a direct relation here. So what we would say is that, look, it appears that my S entropy is related to log of omega. Okay. One reason is very simple, because the number of states are multiplicative. So if I have omega 1 on the left and omega 2 on the right, then the number of states becomes omega 1 into omega 2, whereas entropy would become S1 plus S2. Entropy is additive, number of states are multiplicative, right? And you know that log of product is equal to sum of two logs. So that is why it appears that entropy should behave like log omega. And then for the dimensionality, there is a constant introduced, which is called Boltzmann constant. So you write entropy as k log omega. And because your omega is getting maximized, you know, from a very systematic arrangement, it goes into a big distribution around. Like you open the perfume bottle, okay, it's very well ordered state because all the perfume is within the bottle. You open, and after a while, the whole perfume is spread in the room. It's not accessible to you. So it went from an ordered state into disordered state. So, and you saw the number of states have increased, entropy has increased. So in a way, entropy is actually a measure of disorder. So because of this counting of states, entropy becomes measure of disorder. That from thermodynamics we always talked about, but not knowing the origin. But it appears, you look at the statistical origin of this, then entropy is a measure of disorder, right? I've already told you that entropy is an additive function, whereas omega is a multiplicative function. And therefore, if you look at this, if I say S is k log omega, okay, then if I put k here and k here, okay, then it tells me that my beta has to be 1 by kt, where this k has a value known as Boltzmann constant that you are already familiar with from the thermodynamics. But I must tell you something very interesting, that this equation S equal to k log omega is engraved on tombstone of uh, Boltzmann. Okay, Boltzmann is famous. It's like your Newton's laws of motion in mechanics or your Maxwell's equation in electrodynamics. S equal to k log omega is the pioneering equation of statistical thermodynamics, which is credited to Boltzmann's idea. So that's engraved on Boltzmann's tombstone. At this point, we will stop here. I'll repeat what we did. We started with a review of what we did last time, where we showed the binomial distribution to be same as Gaussian. Then we took an we saw the properties of Gaussian distribution. Then we took an example where we can further show for a very small p-value probability of an event to occur. The same binomial distribution to reduce to uh, Poisson's distribution. Then we want to switch over to establishing relation between thermodynamics and statistics. And so we talked about macrostates, microstates. We understood in terms of tossing of two dice. And then we actually took two boxes in thermal contact. And we said that the thermal equilibrium has to be reached. And that would be the case when number of states are maximized. That, remember, we always talk in terms of gas molecules distributed in left and right, up that kind of analogy. And we, from our experience, we know that the thermal equilibrium will be the one in which both the sides temperature are same. And then that's what it leads us to, that this parameter has to be same, which of course we know in case of classical thermodynamics is related to temperature. So we could establish relation between entropy and the number of states. So if I can do this and I can write entropy from number of states, then I can just do statistics of a system, find what is entropy and then invert it. And then as we go further, you will see how we are going to establish thermodynamic properties. So at this point, I will stop my session here. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any question to ask? Okay, nobody has any question. So Omkarji, thank you very much. We would like to end the session here.